Journalism is one of the oldest professions known to man, dating back to the ancient Roman Empire. In recent years, journalism has seen changes in ways unforeseen, as the rise of technology and social media has changed the way we view journalism today. Despite these technologies bringing a lot of new ways of reporting and telling stories, journalism has never been a more risky field to get into. Since 2005, there has been an over 50% decrease in employment for journalists, and that number has no signs of slowing down. For those who are pursuing journalism as a career, the job market has only worsened over the years, causing an increase in unemployment for aspiring journalists. With this situation worsening by the day, I talked to Dan Canobbio, a young journalist who has found success in this current climate. Through his show, Inside Boxing Live, Dan has been able to pursue his passion in boxing by providing insight and interviews with the biggest names in the sport. To learn more about his journey as a journalist so far, here is CompuBoxTV's Dan Canobbio.
So my first internship was with a magazine. It was like a small magazine. It was a New York focused magazine, and I was like proofreading articles. I was researching articles for the writers there. Eventually they would allow me to write like one small little blurb, and I got to go to Knicks games, like go in the locker room, and this is when the Knicks were awful, but it was still a lot of fun, like being like 18 or 19 and being in the Knicks locker room, or being around people that I looked up to in the industry. I mean, that's like the most invaluable experience you can get. Early on, I took jobs at CBS Sports, I took a job at MLB Network. Wasn't exactly in boxing, but it was in like production, it was in TV, it was in like, the umbrella of journalism. And along this way, you learn stuff. Like at CBS, I learned how to put together a live-to-tape show, like a show that isn't exactly live, but it seems like it's live on TV. At MLB Network, I was a researcher, getting information for all the talent on the air, like in their ear. If they want to know how many home runs did Jeter hit in the playoffs, you got to have that on the fly. So that type of stuff. And then eventually, I just said one day, I was just like, I'm tired of being behind the camera. I want to be in front of the camera. And so I just literally started my own show. Like I was lucky enough to have my brother wanted to be involved on the background. He wanted to be, he always was good with sound and equipment and stuff. I'm not good at that stuff. So one day I was like, I'm going to be on camera, and I started my own show. And that's the hardest part, is kind of just taking that leap and just going for it, but also just going full bore. Every week you have to put out content, and it was a leap of faith. And I've been doing it for like 4 or 5 years now, and it took a long time to gain some traction. You got to just stay consistent with it. But that's pretty much how I started off with my show. All right, it's another edition of Inside Boxing Live, coming to you from the studios here in New York, New York. I'm your host, Dan Canobbio. On this episode, we have a big one for you. I shoot my show usually midweek. So in the boxing world, the fights happen on the weekends. So usually you react on Sunday and Monday to what happened the past week, and then you start game planning on what the show should be. Like, what guests that you want, what you want to talk about. And usually with a big show, you have a producer that will kind of come up with topics and will reach out to guests. But when you're at my level, or you're just starting, or you enjoy being more hands-on, like, you go out and find the guests. So then you reach out to all different people you have. You try to figure out who you want to talk to. Like, for instance, like Tyson Fury just fought Deontay Wilder. It was a huge fight. And after the fight ended, I was like, oh man, I realized that people wanted to continue to talk about the fight. Like, they didn't want to move on to the next week's topic. So then I thought, like, who can we get? So I thought of Max Kellerman from ESPN, like, reach out, set it all up. And then you just, from that point, you're trying to figure out what questions you want to ask and what fans want to hear. Always want to think, what does your audience want to know? But if they could ask Max or to guess something, what would it be? So that's really the week. And then afterwards, it's just chopping up the show, getting it out there to our distributors, getting it on the podcast, put it on social media. So, like, it never stops. And it's just like one continuous circle of just waiting for the next week and waiting for the next show. The main thing is just being consistent. Like, some days where I don't want to put it out, when I just don't feel like putting out content, but you have to be very consistent or someone else will replace you. So whether if you're just doing it by yourself, like I kind of do, like as an independent show, and I have sponsors and that they help, but I don't work for a specific media company, so it's all on me. So the success of my show is based on how much I'm willing to put into it. Not just on the days that I'm shooting it, the days around it. Like I have to clip out a great part of an interview and put it on Twitter or Instagram for people to interact with it. So you just gain relevancy you just have to stay in the conversation. So that's a big part of the podcast world. It's a big part of doing your own shows is just constantly having stuff out there, constantly engaging. Like social media is a great tool. I know there's downfalls to it and there's negatives to it, but in a day and age where you don't have to depend on a media company to hire you to do a show. You can literally go out there and start your own show, put it on YouTube, put it on Apple Podcasts, put it on Spotify, start a Twitter, try to gain a following, and you can make something of yourself, and then hopefully you get the attention of the industry, and then jobs will come as well. So I would say to someone out there that's looking to start something, it's like you have to just take that step. Whether it's starting a podcast, starting a blog, like you have to have something to show that you can do the job, and then you can build it yourself. I think a lot of companies look for that. They want to see that you already have a following. They want to see that you have engagement. The fact that you can make it on your own without a company behind you. And to be honest, like some fans like the fact that you're independent. If they see if you're connected to like a big company, sometimes fans aren't into it. So you always got to stay true to yourself, and you can do it on your own.
Our last guest here on Inside Boxing Live, we saved the best for last. He is Bob Canobbio, just happens to be my dad, also happens to be the creator of CompuBox.
My dad's a big inspiration. He always, telling me, do this, do that, or, giving me good feedback. Having friends in the business too helps. People that are like-minded like yourself, that are also like kind of doing the same thing as you. It's always good to bounce stuff off of them. It's always good to just talk to people like that, to just feel like you can kind of commiserate in a way, but also you never know where you can find inspiration for another thing, or networking and stuff like that. I always wanted to do it since I was a kid. I used to play David Letterman in my basement. I was like Dave Letterman. My brother was like behind the scenes, and I would always like talk on camera and like make silly jokes. And then I just was always into sports, and I just knew probably too much about sports and was just always around it as a kid. I mean, that definitely helps, but you don't always have to be that case. You don't always have to be around it to want to get into it, but it helped for me to understand how the business works and like how to carry yourself and exactly what I wanted to do. But yeah, I think it's something like, it's a cool gig. It's a cool profession. It takes a lot of hard work, but if you have it in you, you can go for it.